Hello everybody, and welcome to the second lecture for CSCI 4. In this lecture, I'm going to be actually jumping us into doing some programming, our first programming lesson, which is different than our first lecture where I had to basically walk through the entire syllabus. And I do that so you have a good sense of how the class is set up. But now that that has hopefully been established, my hope is by the point you watching this video, you have set up your development environment, you've watched all of these delightful videos where you learned about the compilation and interpretation process, the command line, the CLI, and then also got an overview of how Piazza works, and taken our course overview quiz, all those things. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing how to like install things or do any of that. My assumption is that you've already set those things up. But I am going to start us off with walking through, like kind of just like starting from square one, launching the development environment, doing a few little quick configuration things, and then get us into actually writing some code. Just as a reminder, this is what our Canvas shell looks like. My expectation is that when you get into Canvas, really like 99% of the time, you're probably just going to head straight over here to modules. I don't advise going to other places unless you really want to. You have a reason to go there, but this is where like most of the content is, and I've organized it from top to bottom, kind of like how I expect us to sort of roll through it. So that's just where I would go most of the time. It's where you're going to see me start in pretty much all of our lectures. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start from square one. I'm going to minimize the screen. And I'm going to just show you how I like to launch Visual Studio Code, which is the text editor that I use for actually doing all of my software development. So this is where I'm going to be writing all of my code for the semester. Again, you could have picked whatever text editor you liked, but as I said in the last video, this is the most popular one, and that's the one I'm going to demonstrate. The way I like to do it, and again, I'm on a Windows-based machine right now, so I'm running Windows 11. If you're on a Mac, you won't be able to do this exactly the same way, but don't worry, I'm going to show you another way that you can launch Visual Studio Code to get you started. So don't worry if this first way doesn't work for you if you're like on a Mac or a Linux system. But if you're on Windows, when you installed Visual Studio Code, assuming it's the text editor you used, one of the options you would have gotten was to, I think they were the little checkboxes when you're installing, and it says something like, add VS Code to the context menu for like opening files or opening folders. I would definitely advise checking both of those boxes because if you do that, what that's going to let you do is I've already created a little folder here. There's nothing in it. I just named the folder Lect2. This is other piece of advice. Create a folder where you can keep all of the work for a particular assignment that you're working on, and that way it's all organized nice. I would name the folder something appropriate. I've picked Lect2 for lecture 2 for me, but for you, you might want to name it like the name of an assignment or something. You're going to right click on it, and then you're not going to see that context menu thing show up initially if you're on Windows 11. This is because Windows 11 changed their context menu. We could have a whole long conversation about why that was a bad idea. Whatever, it's still there. The old one that actually is useful to you is still there. You just have to click show more options. When you do, you get the classic video context menu that's been there for forever. And indeed, the open with code option should be there if you check those boxes when you're installing it. If you click on that, it'll just open this up straight away. Right? And now we're in Visual Studio Code. The nice thing here is that if you do it this way, what you'll notice immediately is over on the left-hand side, and actually I'll make this a little bigger so you can actually see it. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see the Explorer open, and right away it's just showing you Lect2 is here. So you're just starting off in that folder. It also is nice because then when it launches the terminal, it also just starts you off straight at the location that you're at for that folder. So this is the main reason why I strongly advise putting everything in a folder and then opening it from there. Just makes your life way easier. If you're again running on like a Mac or a Linux or whatever, you won't have those context menu options, or at least the last time I tried, I couldn't do it that way. Fret not, it's okay. I'm going to close this down. There's another way you can do it. You just want to launch VS Code. If you're on a Mac, I think you can run it through their not the Finder. That's that other tool they have. It's basically like their command. Oh gosh, I'm like spacing out on the keyboard shortcuts. But basically, when you're searching for apps in the Mac system through, I think, their Finder tool, you can open up Visual Studio Code just without associating it with a folder necessarily. You can do the same thing here in Windows by just going and hitting the Window key and then typing Visual Studio Code. It's one of the things that'll pop up. You hit enter, it'll open it. It opened it straight into the folder because I had already done that. So let me see if I can figure out how to make it like not do that. So maybe I just do code, and it keeps trying to do this. I wonder if I just close this. Okay, let me close the folder. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is where you want to start. So if you just start Visual Studio Code, you haven't already opened it in a folder that you had already done something with, it should start you here, which is to say that there's nothing in this. See how it's saying there's no folder, right? Now this is where you could, if you click the Explorer, you could click Open Folder, and then it'll let you navigate over to where the folder actually is, and then you're straight away, you're good to go. I would always open up Visual Studio Code and associate it with a folder. It gets really weird if you try to just open things up and just do it with a file, which is what it'll let you do, but then it's really easy to get lost and not necessarily know where you are on the terminal in relation to like your code and stuff. It really does just make things crummier, and you don't have this Explorer where it shows you all the files that you're dealing with, so it's just not worth it. I would say go ahead and just open the folder. You can do it by clicking here, or you can just come over here and say uh, open folder, right? And then you're just going to pick the folder. I have it over my other window. Pick the folder. I'm going to find it right now on my desktop. It's the one that we were just using. So select two. There it is. Show the folder, and then it opened it up, and I'm in there. And that method I just showed right there will work every time. Doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or Linux or whatever. If you just open up Visual Studio Code and then just navigate to the folder from there, that works too. Okay, so there you go. So you got Visual Studio Code open. You can start doing things. You may have remembered from the previous lecture that I advised the version of Python that we're going to be using in the class all semester. So that's 3.7.9. That's important because you want to make sure that the correct version is running on our machine. So if you ever want to make sure that you're running the correct version of Python, you can open up the terminal and you just type Python. And I usually just do a -V. I think you can do -- version or something like that. This is just the easiest way, right? And it'll tell you what version of Python you're running. Now, right now, I'm not running the correct version of Python. I should be running 3.7.9 for our class, and right now the one that's running is 3.12.9. That's no good. Well, that's because that's the global version I have set because I'm using PyEnv or PyEnv. So if you're running PyEnv and you open up the folder and it's not the correct version of Python, don't worry, you can switch over to the correct version, assuming you've already installed it. So to do that, we would just do PyEnv. I'm going to type versions, and you can see here's all the versions of Python that I have installed on the machine. And right now, the one with the star by it is the one that it's set to use. Most of the time, I am probably going to be using this, but for our class, for this work I'm about to do, I am not going to use that version. Instead, I want to use this version. So I just need to switch. I could change it globally, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make it that for this folder, right? And again, I'm not going to get into all this. I have a whole video showing you how to install PyEnv and convert and configure it. I'm not going to go into all that. So just quickly to make sure that this folder is using the right version, I'm going to write PyEnv local 3.7.9. And there it is. And now if I run that same command again that does python-v, you'll notice now it actually says 3.7.9 like it's supposed to, right? So I now know that I'm using the correct version of Python for the work I'm about to do. You also can know that by clicking on this little Python version file that showed up here, and it'll tell you that as well. Don't ever change that, by the way. Don't like mess with this file. You should always do it through the command line. Okay, so now I'm going to clear all that out. Great. I'm here anyway. Might as well just let you know this is something that sometimes happens every once in a while. If you open it up and you notice over here this says like this PowerShell thing, it's all in yellow. It can happen for any number of reasons. It's usually because you switched the version of Python you were using or whatever. You can just highlight over it and then just say relaunch to terminal, and it will close the terminal. I guess actually it's a good excuse to show you how to open up the terminal if it wasn't already there. You just hit these three dots at the top, or it might just be listed as a terminal, right? And then you say new terminal, right? And now look, it's not going to say that that nonsense anymore, so we're good. Don't worry, you should still say, if I still go back to python-v, it's still 3.7.9. Nothing weird going on there. Okay, opened up VS Code, made sure the Python version is correct. we're good to go. All right, let's go ahead and start by creating our first file for our Python development we're going to do. So the way you do that in VS Code is you come over here. If you move your mouse over to the left-hand side in this Explorer, you'll notice there's a bunch of options right here next to the name of the folder. One of them is this thing that says New File. I'm going to click New File, and you can name your file pretty much whatever you want. I think for the Hello World assignment, I would have said something like main.py or something like that. Honestly, you can name the file whatever you want. For today, I'm just going to actually call it lecture2.py just to demonstrate that you can call it whatever you want. It's fine. This is something else that you should know. So you notice that the first time I launched an actual Python file in VS Code, we went right back to this yellow thing, and that's because now VS Code knows, oh, you're about to do some Python development as opposed to other kinds of development. Over on the bottom right, VS Code is going to want to try to help you out with language support, so like IntelliSense stuff. But right now, it still thinks that I'm using 3.12.9 down here in the bottom right. If you click on that and then you pick the version that you actually want, like let's say 3.7.9, right? That's just telling it that's the version of Python that it should give you the correct sort of IntelliSense for. When you do that, you might also again have to relaunch the terminal by clicking, just hovering over it. Don't click on it. Hover over that and then relaunch terminal. Okay, and now we're back, and everything should be all aces. Okay, so little weird things you should sometimes have to deal with. I've noticed that a lot of the things that I just did right there are very Windows specific. So if you're running this on like Mac or something else, you might not have to deal with some of that. But I know a lot of students use Windows, so there you go. Okay, I'm going to take a little drink because I've been talking for a minute. Let's do some actual coding. The first thing I want to show us how to do, and actually I'm going to consult my notes here, is actually just going to go ahead and start us off with the proper code layout. So the last time we did some coding, I did Hello World. I really just sort of said here, copy and paste this in here and don't worry about it. And there really wasn't any explanation on what that code did. We're going to change that right now. I'm actually going to navigate over to our Canvas shell again. And right now you should actually see the proper code layout should now show up as an example code. So this is the only thing in our example code module at the moment. As I said during the last lecture, example code is where I put code that I just need you to know how to use. It's kind of just sort of like templated code because it's stuff that you're going to use more than once throughout the semester. And I'm just kind of giving you a nice easy spot to collect it. I'm going to click on the proper code layout page. Wait a minute for it to load. There it is. And this is really just an outline of what all of the code in our class, the kind of the starting point, should look like for pretty much every single assignment you're going to do in the class. So the easiest thing to do for this is to really just to highlight this. I'm going to hit Control C or Command C if you're on a Mac keyboard. I'm going to head back over to my code. I'm going to hit Control V or Command V again if you're on a Mac, and paste that in there, right? And this is what is known as our proper code layout. So this gives me a good launching point. I'm gonna hit Control S, by the way. I guess there's another little tip there if you're using VS Code. Always make sure to save your file after you've made changes to the file in the text editor. You can always tell if you have unsaved changes in your text editor. So if you've like written code but you haven't saved it yet, easy to tell in VS Code because you'll see this little white dot right here. Right next to where on the file name. The white dot is there. It means that you haven't saved anything. When I hit Control S, you'll notice the white dot disappears. Okay, and that's just letting you know, hey, everything's saved now, right? So all the work you have done up to this point has been saved into this file. It's actually stored on the hard drive. If you don't hit Control S, if you don't save, it won't actually be in the file, and that'll cause all kinds of problems later when you start to try to run your code. Okay, so just a little tip to keep doing that. So I pasted some code in here, so now I wanted to save it. Let's go ahead and launch into kind of what all this means. I actually, if you ever go back over to the proper code layout page, I do try my best to explain a little bit of it. This is just our starting point. And this top part right here is sort of the main crux of what it is that I'm mostly wanting you to do. Also, this convention that I'm doing down here, strictly speaking, is not necessary in Python, but I am requiring everybody to do it this way because it emulates a more professional setup for Python, and also what you can expect to see sort of format-wise in almost any other compiled programming language. I'm trying to get you kind of in that habit of seeing these things and knowing what they mean. Okay, so this is the template we're going to use. Before I launch into what this top part is here, I mean, I think this is just a good starting point for talking about the first topic in programming that I want to cover, which is commenting. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. I'm about to tell you. It's probably one of the areas that most starting out programming students pay the least attention to. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's not because it's like all students are bad or whatever, but it's like one of those things that you don't get the value out of it when you first start. It's one of those things that as you become you've been coding longer and longer and longer, commenting becomes far more useful and far more important. But when you're starting out, it's not as useful, so people don't do it as much. But I really want to impart on you how important this is. It's a very important skill to just start doing right from the get-go. Get yourself in the right frame of mind. This is just a normal part of how you code. That way, when you're later on, it's still there and you're still doing it, and you're not not doing it and wishing you had. So let's start off with the two different kinds of comments that pretty much all programming languages have. I'm going to start us off with the simple one, which are called line comments. Now you can see right here, I actually already have a line comment. A line comment, more generically, what is a comment? A comment is a bit of it's some text that you put into your program that is not is ignored by either the compiler or the interpreter. Python is an interpreted language, so it's an interpreter, but the interpreter will ignore comments. Okay, so basically, anything you write into that comment area, the interpreter will see it and go like, "Oh, that's not actual code. That's not something I actually need to pay attention to," and it just moves right past it. Doesn't even care. So then you might be asking yourself like, why would you ever put something into your file that the interpreter's not going to like? Why would you ever put something in there that's not actual code? Well, the answer to that is it's documentation. Okay, this is why I say most starting out students don't want to do documentation. Nobody wants to do it, but it's very important. So documentation in programming is just like how it is in most other things, right? It's you documenting what the thing you're actually writing does. There's a couple different forms of commenting that pretty much every programming language supports. Python's no different. And I'm going to show you those two different flavors right now. The first, and arguably in Python the most common, is the line comment. A line comment is distinguished from code in Python by this pound sign, or hashtag, I suppose, if we're being more modern, right? So this pound symbol right here, whenever the Python interpreter sees this, anything to the right of it, it will ignore. Okay, so notice that in my proper code layout, I actually added this comment in there for you, and it's really doing exactly what a comment's supposed to do. It's letting you know, the person who's looking at this code, what this means, and this is just telling you, hey, this is where you're going to write your code in your program. You're going to write it right here. Okay, you can use comments for all sorts of reasons. There's a bit of a subjectivity to them. Some programmers comment a lot, some programmers comment very little. Where they choose to comment, it's very much a matter of personal choice and preference. My rule of thumb for most programmers who've been doing it for a long time, and whenever I see it, is it's usually one of those situations where you write some code and then you look at the code and you go is this really easy for me to understand? Is it obvious what I'm doing right here as a professional who's been doing it for a long time? If the answer to that is no, then that's usually a good spot for me to be it's time for me to write some comments. Because if it's not obvious to me, as the person who just wrote it, would I understand this later if I looked at it? If the answer is no, then I probably need to add some context here so to help out myself later on when I have to look at this code again. If the answer is yes, it's pretty obvious, you might skip past it. Now that's for kind of a more seasoned programmer. You, a brand new student who's just learning how to program, starting out fresh, I would say comment as liberally as you want. You could comment every line of code if you want, and that's fine. The primary beneficiary of the comments right now in your context is you. So you're going to be the person who gets to look at this code later, and you probably will want to look at code you write in this class later. And if you didn't write any comments, maybe you'll be able to easily figure out what you were doing. Or maybe you'll look at it and be I don't remember what the heck I was doing. And this becomes even more important as you write code that you revisit really a lot of time has passed. And this is extremely common in programming. You write some code, 6 months, a year passes, you have to come back and look at the code, and you're like, I don't remember what the heck I was doing a year ago. I don't remember why I did it this way. Was there a was there a reason? Right? This is where those comments are super helpful. The other reason why they're helpful, and I'm sorry if I'm beating this to death, but this is one of those areas that people need to know how to do it. It's just one of those areas that doesn't get a lot of love, and it should. Is that programming in a professional capacity is a team sport. It is. There's not a lot of places where you're the sole programmer. Usually you're working in a team, which means that the code that you're looking at oftentimes is not code that you were the person who wrote. You're looking at other people's code. And you quickly figure out the people who you're working with who don't write comments because you learn to loathe those people because sometimes you look at their code and you have no idea what it is that it does. And then you have to spend a lot of extra time figuring out what it does without any like reference points. And there's also a lot of turnover in programming. People leave companies and go to other ones. So with that in mind, the person who wrote the original code might not even be at the organization anymore. And the only thing you have to go off of is those comments or their lack of. Right? So this is why this is such an important skill. Again, at your level where you're first starting out right now, I would say comment almost everything. You will not get in trouble in this class for over commenting. You won't. I've never had a student do it. In a professional capacity world, if you were to write War and Peace into the comments, I'm sure somebody would not like that. I probably wouldn't like that. But I would always rather see more than too little. Hmm? All right. Again, how mechanically how do they work? It's just like this. It's just a hash sign and then um, some code. So I can go up here. You can put them anywhere you want in the code. So again, I can put it here and just do this. Say like, right? And the interpreter will just completely ignore that. It doesn't care anything about what happens after that pound sign. You can do something before the pound sign and it'll actually be fine. So again, if I wanted to write some code like print hello world from our previous assignment, right? But then after that, I wanted to put the pound sign and say like, this is a comment. Okay, notice how VS Code is actually also helping you out with some syntax highlighting. So notice how every time it identifies a comment, it puts it in green, and anything that's not, it will actually color code it a way that's a little easier for you to look at for code. So it makes it very easy for you to distinguish what things in the program are comments and which things are not. Okay, so that's a nice easy way to think of line comments. They're called line comments because they only affect the line that they're written on. So if I come down here to the next thing, hello world. Okay. It notice how there's not in green here. It thinks this is actual code, and actually VS Code's already immediately giving me a bunch of like warnings and errors saying like, hey, I don't know what this is. This doesn't make any sense for code. This isn't proper Python code. What is all this? Okay. That's why. If I wanted to make more than make it again, I would just do that. Okay. Little tricks that you can do for commenting. In VS Code, if you're using VS Code, here's a nice little trick. If you highlight some code, right, or highlight some stuff like this, and I hit Control/, I can take the comments away if there were already comments. And then if I hit Control/, again, the comments come back. In fact, I can just keep flip-flopping between those two as much as I want, right? So in Python, they actually use line comments, I would argue, even more than the other kind I'm going to show in a second. This is the most common sort of commenting that exists in Python. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the other kind of commenting. The other option is what is known as a block comment. Okay, so this is a line comment. Here, I'll even write this as a line comment. And again, it just does one line. A block comment is when you have a bit of a chunk of text and it's going to go over several lines. In that case, most programming languages support a syntax that will allow you to just comment out that whole chunk and not have to put a special character in front of every single line. Okay, so if you don't want to do that, most programming languages support what is known as a block comment. Now, Python's version of a block comment is a little weird compared to other languages. It's actually also a little bit more robust in some ways. Their way of doing it is actually this bit that I have right up here at the top, where they use three double quotes all in a row, and then they denote the end of the block comment with three more double quotes. Anything in between here will actually be ignored by the Python interpreter. It is In computer science terms, this is what is known as a block comment. Okay, so now I might put that in here. Block comment. Okay. In Python, they actually have it a special name. They refer to this particular setup as a doc string. Okay, and that's why they put it in double quotes, because they're trying to denote it as sort of like a string. It's a special kind of string. But it also is just basically a block comment. The interpreter will just ignore this. It won't treat it as anything special as it relates to actually executing code. Okay. The reason why I say it's a little bit special in Python is because their docstring system is actually designed to do exactly what comments are supposed to be. They are documentation. So they're meant to be something that another programmer, yourself or somebody else, would look at later and could use it to help them understand how the program is supposed to work. Okay, that's why they call it a doc, as in documentation string. And they actually have a help system that's built into Python that you could theoretically use to quickly review the documentation for a Python program. I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. But first, let me just consult my notes again to make sure I'm on track for showing you guys how to do everything. I think we're good. Can I just jump straight into that? Before I do, actually, there's one more thing I wanted to mention, and this is the other utility that comments have. And this is probably the more practical utility that they have while you're in the middle of writing code. And that is comments, by their nature, they are ignored by the interpreter. So I'm going to hit save here. So if I were to run this program right now, my expectation is the only thing I'm going to see pop out of this program is this thing that says hello world. I'm not going to see any of this. I'm not going to see this. I'm not going to see that or this, right? None of that other junk will be there. Okay. So let's actually run the code, since I haven't shown you how to do that yet. To run code in Python, as you can see, I have my file here called lecture2.py. It is in, well, you can just saw right here, it's in the users mat desktop lec2 lecture2.py. That's where it's located on my machine. Luckily, because I opened VS Code in that folder, the terminal is already set to the exact location that I'm in. In fact, if I wanted to, I could just list out whatever is in this folder, and you can see, hey, there's lecture2.py just sitting right there, ready to go. Okay, so with that in mind, when you once you are in the same location as your file, you can write Python, right, space, and then the name of the file. In this case, it would be lecture2.py. Hit enter, and there's hello world. Okay, so it just ran my program. If I were to make changes to my program right now, so let's say I went hello world format, right? Again, I'm going to hit Control S to save, make sure I save those changes. Then I'm going to run that same exact bit of code again, or that same command again, I'm sorry. And notice now it says hello world format, okay? So this is sort of that iterative nature of programming. I'm going to write some code up here. When I want to test out that code, I'm going to come down here and run that code through the command line. And then when I want to confirm that it works, or if it doesn't work, I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to make some changes. Ping pong between those two windows pretty much all day long. That's what it is to be a developer. All right, so let's say as I was developing though, let's say I'll make another print here. So print, here's, okay, I'm going to hit Control S, right? And then I'm going to run it again, and here's hello world format, and here's another line of text, okay? Now let's say for some reason I was doing some debugging and I wanted to only run some of my code but not run all of it. Well, I guess I could come in here and I could actually just delete that and hit Control S and then run it again, and then of course I've gotten rid of it. But if I didn't want to do that, let's say I just wanted to temporarily get rid of something while I'm debugging a problem, this is another use case for commenting. So it's very common for people to comment out just a section of code, just a little bit. So in this situation, this isn't actual documentation, right? This isn't meant to document anything. This is just me running a quick test where I don't want some code to run for a moment because I'm checking something in the output, but I don't want to like delete it out of my program, right? I just need it to not run for a moment. That's another really common use case for commenting. So again, here I go. And now notice how, because I commented this out, it didn't run. The only thing I got was hello world format. Okay, so it's another really common use case for commenting, is for debugging problems. Now again, when you're finished doing your development, I would expect to not see any of this kind of nonsense in your program because that's really sloppy looking. It also can be confusing to yourself or others. Why was this commented out? Should it be there? Was this a mistake on the programmer's part? There's no context. I need help, right? So I wouldn't advise doing that and leaving it in a finished part of your program. But while you're in the middle of development, very, very common thing to do. Okay, let's move on to I guess the documentation, the doc string. So this is a very Python specific thing, but I wanted to show you how it works. When you're filling out your header block, so that's what this is also referred to now. This is a special kind of block comment that I'm requiring in all of your programs. You can put block comments anywhere. So like for instance, I could put a block comment, I don't know, like right here. Um, this is another block comment, right? Hit save, run it, and see how it just ignored any of this. It didn't even look at it. Okay, so it's just block commenting out. But the nice thing here is that I could just keep adding more and more and more junk into here, and I don't have to put these special quotation marks at the beginning of everything. It's literally anything between those two is going to get ignored, right? So if I run this now, again, it doesn't care. It ignores it entirely. Okay, and you can put them anywhere you want. I'm requiring all of you to put this at the very top, and this is what is known as sort of a header block or the header block documentation. This is a very common thing that organizations will do with files for their programming files. And basically what that is it's documentation sort of at a high level of what the overall of what this file does. Now in our situation, this is a real simple program. You probably, I would imagine most of your programs are going to just follow this format. So in this case, it might be like, assignment 1, whatever the assignment name is. You would put your name here. Okay, put it right here. Put the date. What is today? It is 8. I'm doing this on the 23rd. 25, right? And then the description. So this is something that I am going to require of all of you. I want you to write a short description of what this program does. Okay, so for me, in this situation, this is what I'm using it for. I hit Control S. This is basically what I'm looking for in your header blocks for all of your code that you submit. I didn't require this for Hello World because it was not the focus of that assignment. But pretty much for every programming assignment you're going to get from here on out, this is going to be a required part of it. You're going to see it in the grading rubric. From my perspective, it's very easy points for you to earn. So just do it every single time. I want you to get in the habit of documenting your code, and this is a real easy way for me to do it. Most organizations have their own standards for what they want people to do in their organization as it relates to like a header block. This is my standard. This is how I've set it up. You might see it look differently in other places, but it's pretty common that you'll see it at the very top of most files. They'll have something like this. And this is what I'm looking for. So yeah, don't do like that would be crappy. You probably would actually get dinged on this, right? Like that's not really a description of what it does, right? I'm looking for something that actually tells me, like, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it does need to give me a general idea of what this program does. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. Let's see here. Okay, so that's what the doc string is. I will show you really quickly kind of the neat thing that Python does for this. So I'm going to add a bunch of text in here just to let you kind of see the usefulness of it. So let's say I did have a really elaborate description in here of a whole bunch of what this this program does. Actually, and the fact that I even have this over here, this probably will also show up in there. Their docstring system that Python built is actually meant to make it a little easier for you to do this kind of stuff. So this is a good segue into another sort of Python specific stuff. I know I said this isn't a Python class, and it's not, but we are using Python, and a lot of what I do want to make sure I'm clear about things that could happen while you're doing your development, and I don't want you to be confused by it because you're using this language and it does something weird and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. I'm just trying to cover my bases. Again, try not to spend a lot of my time on Python specific, but sometimes I gotta, especially in this first kind of programming lecture, I kind of gotta get through some of that. So here we go. What would happen if I were to just type Python and not tell it the name of a file? So you notice that every time I've run this so far, I wrote Python and then I wrote the name of the file, and it basically went and ran the code in the file. Well, what if I were to just type Python and not give it the name of the file, and I hit enter? Well, you have now entered what is known as the Python interactive shell. I'm not going to go into this is not going to devolve into like a shell conversation, because that's a pretty deep conversation. I'm not going there. Suffice to say that I am no longer running in PowerShell. In fact, VS Code is even trying to notify me of that by the fact that you might have noticed previously this said PowerShell and now it says Python. Okay, and if you ever get to a situation where you accidentally type this and now you're over here and you get these three little arrows to the right and you're like, whoa, what's all this? So what's happening right now is you're actually running Python interactively. Meaning that what's actually happening is it's as if you were inside of this file, and every single command you can just run that command from here, right? So for instance, if I wanted to say, I could now just write print hello world, just like I did in the file, and it immediately executes what I did, right? It's letting you run Python interactively. Personally, I don't think there's a lot of usefulness for you. I really don't think there's a lot of usefulness for you to run Python interactively while you're learning Python. There's some people who feel differently about that than I do. I know that some people, they think this is a great learning tool. Personally, I find it to be very hampering for people who are learning, because they start doing stuff here and then they don't know, and then they expect everything to sort of work this way when they get back in the file, and they kind of train themselves out of how to actually like write code like a developer would, and I kind of feel like it does more harm than good. So I want you to be aware of, like, if you accidentally ever just typed Python and you saw these and you're like, whoa, what's going on? I want you to know what the heck was happening, but I don't want to advise like using this unless you have like some really specific scenario where you where this is useful to you. I wouldn't do it. If you ever get here and you're just like, how do I get out? Pretty easy. You just type the word quit and then an open and close parenthesis, and it'll take you right back out. And notice that when as soon as I did that, it also took me back to PowerShell. That's the other way you can tell. If you were ever in Python like this and you were like, oh, and you didn't even know, you might start trying to run PowerShell commands like ls, right? And it's going to be like, I don't know what that is. Because again, I'm not in PowerShell anymore. Now I'm actually running in Python. Everything I do from this point on has to be a Python command, right? So again, I just want to get back out. I'm back in Python. I'm back in PowerShell. And then if I type ls, I can see the stuff in the file again. So just let you know, that might happen to you, and you might be like, well, what's going on? That's what's going on. Okay. There is one useful thing to doing it though. If I do just get back in here, this is where I can talk about sort of the docstring situation for Python. So they use their block comments as a way to sort of document their code. As you can see, I wrote a sensible description here, but then I wrote a bunch of jargon or a bunch of gobbledygook. The reason why I did that is so you can show you how their help system works. So if you want, when you come in here, you can actually run a couple commands to leverage. And this, I'm trying to show you how a Python developer might use Python's documentation system. Let's say I wasn't even looking at this file, and I just wanted to know what the documentation was that somebody wrote for that file, because I just, hopefully they wrote some good documentation. Well, you can, I named the file lecture2, so you can actually just run import lecture2, okay? That'll import that code, and then I can write help lecture2, and if you do that, look what it does. And it actually gives me, and I'll make this a little bigger, it actually gives me help on lecture 2, the name of my module. They call them modules in Python. And look, here's description, assignment 1, author. There's all that stuff I wrote in the documentation, right? I can actually step through it by keep hitting enter. This is why I wanted to write a bunch of stuff in there. It only shows you so much of it. Every time I hit enter, it goes to the next line. Okay. If I wanted to walk through the documentation a little faster, I could hit the space bar and it'll go through each page. Okay. And actually that took me out of their documentation. I just read all the documentation. It told me the name, the description, the function I had in there, which was called main, and it told me where it was located. All of that came from the documentation, their documentation system by running help. All right. Pretty neat, right? That's pretty cool. If you were ever in here, let's say I do that again, or actually I can't do that. Let's say I ran it again. Okay, I'm back in here, and I don't want to like step through. Maybe it's a ton of documentation. I don't want to step through 100 pages. You could also just hit Q, and that'll just exit out of it. Okay, so you could hit enter for the next line, space for a page, going down a page at a time, or Q and just get the heck out. Okay, again, if I don't want to be in here, I'm going to quit out of the Python mode, and there you go. I am back into PowerShell. Okay, so that's sort of the rationale for their docstring system. That's why that's their version of a block comment. Most programming languages don't have something that elaborate built into the language itself for documentation. Usually, it's more just something that you would look at as you were reviewing the code itself. You would see their comments and go, oh, okay, this is what they were trying to do. But Python has an extra thing. Okay, that does that. Oh, and by the way, I guess it's a special add-on thing. If you ever wanted to look at the documentation for a file and you didn't want to have to like go into the Python interactive shell directly, you could also do Python, I think it's -C, and then you could just write the code directly here. Import, what is it called? Lecture 2, and then help lecture 2. I think this should probably do it in the quote, and yeah, I'll do the same thing. And this situation is kind of neat because I didn't have to actually go into the shell directly, and then if I just want to get out of it, I hit quit, and I'm back in PowerShell. So there's another little neat way to do it. There's a little extra bit of nonsense for you. All right, I'm going to get rid of all this extra crap here because I don't need that now. I was just doing that so I could show you. Okay, so we've talked about the proper code layout, commenting. So the two different comments, line comment and the block comment, right? And I'll get rid of some more of this block comment stuff here for you. I'll give you this code, by the way. I think I mentioned that during the last lecture, but I always post all the code that I write during my lectures in Canvas, so you'll have access to this later. So I always try to make it not look completely ridiculous. Let's see here. Okay, so that was commenting, and this is sort of my expectation for what I would want you to do for commenting. Comment as often as necessary for you, and feel free to do more comments than not. Okay, and sometimes when I'm grading, that's helpful for me to kind of also gives me a hint at what you were trying to do, even if you did it wrong. Okay, let's talk about the last and probably major thing that I want you to focus on for this week, and that is actually something that I've been showing you how to do already, which is this print function. Okay, and that is actually printing stuff to the terminal. So the first thing that I wanted to comment about this, I just talked about commenting, I'm commenting on it now, is that what the print function does and its relationship to the output that you get out of your program. Now, you've already seen this a little bit, but I want to really emphasize it. There really isn't any relationship between where code is in your file, in your program, and how it comes out here in the terminal. Okay, so case in point, I have two print statements here and one here, right? If I put like a million, like a bunch of stuff between this print statement and this print statement in the file, and I hit Control S and I run the program, Python lecture 2, okay, it doesn't change anything about how they come out here. They're right next to each other out here, okay? So that's one of the first things I want to kind of help clarify is that there really isn't any relationship between how things are printed in your program, like where they show up here in the file, in your code file, and how they come out of the terminal. They really aren't related to each other. The way that the interpreter knows what things to put onto the terminal is by using this print function, and we're going to talk more about functions later on. For now, just know it's a function, and you give it, it's like a command. You can almost think of it like a command. I'm saying, here's the print command, and I'm saying you do a thing. It's not actually a command, it's a function, but you can think of it that way. And you put an open, a starting double quote, and then another double quote, and anything between those two double quotes, this is what is known as a string literal. That's a computer science term, a string literal. It literally means a string. It's a string literal. What it's basically saying is there's going to be some characters that I put between this opening double quote and this closing double quote, and anything in between those, I want you to literally put those characters onto the terminal. Right? The actual characters themselves, that just put them all over there, okay? In the order that I gave them to you in. So in this case, the most common use case for that is, of course, when you're writing text like this, whatever I put between the two string literals or the two end double quotes, it's going to put it right out there. Now there are some peculiarities of how the print function is implemented in Python, and so I want to walk through sort of those intricacies right now. I'm also going to talk a little bit about just how printing to the terminal works in general. And to help with that a little bit is I'm actually going to switch over to OneNote for a second, and you can watch me draw. So I've actually drawn a little diagram here for you, and I want to talk about something called standard out. And don't worry if you don't know what that is, and I'm not going to get crazy in depth on this. I just need you to understand the basics. Basics I think are very useful to you. It's probably more in depth than most teachers would go on the first programming lecture, but I want you to know, I think that it's helpful for students to know why they're doing the thing that they're doing and like how it actually works, and not just like I memorized that when I do print something happens. Like I want you to know. Okay, so standard out is basically an output buffer. You can kind of think of it as basically like a big block of space in your operating system. Okay, and that big block of space, I've denoted it with this just like kind of a, like a rectangle with a bunch of little spots in it, right? And this is I think a pretty good mental picture for what an output buffer looks like, for what standard out looks like. It's basically where when you use print, you're saying print's going to take all of the characters that you give it and it's going to put it into standard out. Okay, so the thing that's important to understand here more than anything is that this exists independent of Python. This standard out is across, that's an operating system thing. It has nothing to do with the language. Every language uses standard out. Every language. There is no language that doesn't, right? And so this just sort of exists independent of the language you're using. So I'm trying to teach you some actual like computer science here and not just like Python. Python uses standard out, like all the other languages do, to push information onto a CLI like PowerShell. Okay. So how does it work? Let's say you're coming in here and you're writing print like we were just doing. So print, and then you put in the double quotes. Let's just say hello. Okay. Okay. So you run the command in Python. The interpreter gets to this point and they're like, cool. I see that you are using this command, and this command tells me to push things onto this particular output buffer. Awesome. It's going to look at every single character between these two double quotes, and it's going to put them in here. So the way that it works is it would say, okay, this first one is the H, and this is where the L O goes, okay? And you might think that's the only thing that print does, but it doesn't, okay? And this is why I want to talk about this a little bit. Print actually does one more thing for you. When you run the print function, it will put all of the characters between those two in there. But in addition, you won't have this in your print command. Nowhere in here will you say this, but what print just automatically does for you is it adds one more character to the standard output, and that is a new line character. Okay. A new line character is a special character. So just like how when you're using any kind of text editor, right, and we can use VS Code for this to showcase it. What happens when you hit enter in a text editor? And this doesn't matter if it's VS Code, by the way. If you've ever done anything, if you're in Microsoft Word, if you're in Notepad, if you're in a form on a web page, right? When you hit enter, what happens? You go to another line, don't you? Another line appears, and then you start typing text here, new line, new line, new line, right? Every time I did that, okay, new line is an actual character. It's an actual character. The system has to keep track of that. It has to know that there's something that distinguishes when this J happened between that J and this A. Somehow it had to know that the next line had to happen, right? Okay, and the way it does it is it stores it as a special character that we call the new line character. Okay, so that is a character that actually gets stored by the system. It shows up, and indeed, it's something that gets stored in standard out. That's how standard output knows when it displays the information back out to you on the CLI where to put line breaks and things. It has to know. So print actually just automatically appends the new line character after whatever it is you put in here. Okay, which is why if when I was down here and I wrote hello world format, and then right after I wrote, here's another line of the text. Notice how we have hello world format, and then a new line happens, and then this happens, right? That's how that's able to happen, is because print is automatically appending that on there. So if you ever were in a situation where you didn't want that to happen, like you wanted, uh, you know, to put it all but have it all on the same line, then you would need to keep it all in one print statement. Okay, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm actually going to write another line of text here. This is all going to be on the same line. Okay, and I'll hit Control S, clear that out, run the code. This is all going to be on the same line. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and just comment these out for now, just so that you guys, so we can kind of focus our attention on just this one. Okay, so there it is. I commented out. I'm also hopefully re-emphasizing the usefulness of being able to block, just comment out some code. All right, so this is all happening on the same line. Perfect. Okay, now let's say for one reason or another that you wanted to control where a new line character showed up on your in your output, but you didn't want to have to do it as two different print statements. Well, you can do that. You can actually manually insert the new line character wherever you want into this string literal, because there's a special character that we use in programming. And again, this is across the board. This is not unique to Python. This is in pretty much every language you're ever going to see. Let's say I wanted to say this is all going, and then right between going and to, I wanted to add a new line character. Okay, to do that, I can do \n. Okay, \n is an escape sequence that is actually used by almost every programming language I've ever heard of to let it know to put the new line character right there. So I'm going to hit Control S now, and I'm going to run this program again. That's all I did. And look what you get now. This is all going, right? And then you get what? A space, because look what happened after that new line. There was a space right afterwards. To be on the same line. To be on the same line, okay? So anywhere I put this in a string literal, that's where it's going to put the new line. So what I was saying about print in general is that print basically puts this at the very end of your new line, and you have no real, you don't have any choice in that on that matter. It just does it for you, okay? So that's pretty neat. So if you ever want to control your output a little bit, that's one way you could do it. You could just put everything here and then just put the new lines in as you see fit. Here's another thing you can do with print, okay? And it has to do with this little extra space. So if you were like, oh, I don't really like this weird space on the second line, then what would you do to fix that? Well, you might just do that, right? Control S, okay? And now if I ran it again, now they all both show up all neat. So this is something else to keep in mind, is that, again, no relationship between this and how it shows up here. It's just one long thing where you're just pushing all that information to this big buffer, and at a certain point it pushes all of that to the CLI, and it just reads it one character at a time. Boom, 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 and all of it's just going to get interpreted by the CLI to put it wherever it needs to go. Okay. Here's something else to keep in mind about how print works. In fact, I'm going to cut that. Actually, I'm going to cut that. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paste it down here. I'll probably use it later. Okay, so when you did this works. Something else that print does for you, and I'm trying to decide if I want to do it here or somewhere else. I'll do it here first. It's fine. Something else that print does for you, you can actually pass multiple things to print. Yeah, so you don't have to just put one piece of text. You can also put one string literal. So that's what this is right here. This is a string literal because it starts and ends with that double quote. After that, you can put a comma, and then you can put another value of some sort. In this case, I'm just going to use another string literal. So another open double quote, and I'm going to put world. Okay. Now, this is another little kind of interesting thing that print does for you automatically. Whenever you pass two values to print like this, all right, these are what are, in programming terms, these are actually what are known as arguments. So again, this is a function, and you're passing arguments to the function. Okay, we'll talk more about this when we get into functions, but just hearing the vocab now is probably good. Okay, I'm going to pass two arguments to the function. Okay, by doing that, When it sees this comma, when it sees that it has two arguments, print's default action is actually to do one thing between them. You might think what's going to happen is I'm just going to get immediately hello world, right? Okay, but that's actually not how print is set up. Print actually, again, when it has multiple arguments, just like how it appends a new line character, when it has two arguments, it adds one character in between the two arguments, and that is a space. Adds the space character. And then it will add WORLD. And then, of course, at the end of that, because it's all just part of one print statement, we get, that's why I saved it for later, Control V. I guess I should just move it here. It's not quite big enough. Ooh, I'll shrink it a little. Ooh, look at that. I'm so clever. Okay, and then it'll put the new line character there. Okay, so that's another little thing to remember about print in particular is that when you print, if you add multiple things to it, if you pass multiple arguments to print separated by that comma to denote the different arguments, it will automatically put a space in between them. I'm going to show you how that works in code right now. So let's do this. Rearrange my whole setup to get it back to that. I don't have a very big desk space here for this. Okay, so let's go ahead and show that really quick. In fact, I'll just use the exact example I just did a second ago. So hopefully there'll be some parity here. So print hello world. Okay, so this is all I did here, hello world. But I did it as two separate things. Now notice there's a space between them now. Even though I didn't add a space, see how in here there's no spaces between the beginning the beginning double quote and the ending double quote and the beginning double quote and the end double quote. There's no, I didn't add a space anywhere in my string literals. There's no spaces, but it added one anyway, which is kind of can be a little confusing for people because some people might think, oh, I need to add a space here. I better add that space because it needs to know about it. Well, if you did it this way, you don't though. Now I'm actually going to have two spaces because it adds one automatically. So this is what I'm trying to kind of let you know how it's set up, how it'll work. All right, so that's the default action of print is every single time it sees multiple things being passed to it, it will automatically add a space. Now, last thing I'm going to leave you with for today, because I think we've kind of covered a fair bit, is there is one way to get around that little feature in print, the adding the space. You actually can override that behavior if you would like, and that is by doing. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to just put that back here. Save. I just want to be able to showcase it really easily, so we'll just do that. Okay, so notice again, I'm back to this. There's just that one space there, right? Okay. If you want, as the very last argument that you pass to it, if you do sep equals, right, and then you do, let's say, open and close curly double quote. Okay, this is a special argument that you can pass to print, and it recognizes it as a special argument. And basically what you're saying to it is, instead of using, this stands for separator, by the way, it's letting you know, like, you're overriding what the separator is that print normally uses. So normally its separator is one space, okay? But if you want, now I'm telling it the separator is nothing. Don't add, I'm basically telling it what you're going to add as a separator between every single argument in print is nothing, okay? By default, it's this. What I'm doing is this now. Okay, if I hit save now, now I'm going to run that exact same bit of code where all I did was add the separator, and now look, hello world's all together, right? Now you can add anything you want as a separator. I can add the number 1 in here as a separator, and now guess what it's going to do? Hello one world. Okay, so you can do whatever you want, and you can actually add as many things as you want. You know, hello and and at this point I probably would put a space like that, right? You could actually add as much as you want in between, and it's fine. Hello and world. Okay, but by and large, what you're probably going to see happen in this class is there might be some situation where you need to be able to put two things right next to each other, and you don't want that space to be there. This is the easiest way to get around that, is to just change the separator to be nothing, right? And then it does exactly what you want. And then in that case, then you can add the space right here, right? And then it works the way you want. So I'm just showing you there are ways around it. I'm also going to show you some other things you can do with print. There's a couple other little features that we're going to talk about as it relates to passing arguments to it. But for today and for this week's assignment, this is really all you're going to need. So with that, all that said, I'm going to go ahead and uh, navigate over to our core shell again. Okay, let's go ahead and just head back over here. Wait a little while. Okay, so this week what you got is lecture 2. So we have 3 things on our setup for this week. First thing is this quiz, is a command line quiz. So this is just a quiz to hopefully make sure you learned everything you need to learn about how to operate on the command line. You saw me doing a little bit of that today when I was on the terminal and I was kind of moving around. I was opening things up. I was running commands there. I want to make sure you understand that. You're going to see me doing it all semester. This is just my way of sort of reaffirming that you've kind of got that idea in your head. The only real programming assignment we have this week is personal factoids. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Personal factoids is basically our first programming assignment where I didn't just tell you exactly how to do everything. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a program that basically just prints onto the terminal some personal information about yourself. If you don't want to share personal information about yourself with me, that's fine. You can make something up. I have no way of verifying. Or you can use this as an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself. I'm not asking anything too personal. Your name, please go ahead and list off your favorite fictional character, your least favorite food, and whether or not you're a Trekkie or a Star Wars kind of person. This is a big deal for me. So much of your grade depends on, your overall grade depends on, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to do that. But I will judge you silently if you pick the wrong thing here. I'm not going to tell you what the correct answer is. After you do all of that, I want you to skip a couple of lines on the output, and then I want you to tell me a favorite quote and go ahead and just put the favorite quote in there. I have an example of what the output should look like. So in this case, here's Matt Cervantes. My favorite fictional character in this case was Sherlock Holmes. Least favorite food is onions. Star Trek or Star Wars, I had Star Trek listed. And then notice how there is a new line, right? So it went on to a new line, but then there's like a little space here between. I don't know, should I make this even bigger? I'll make this really clear. New line, not nothing, a blank line, right? Then favorite quote, then the actual favorite quote is below that, okay? The favorite quote can be as long as you like it. I have an actual favorite quote of mine. This actually is a favorite quote of mine. It's really nice. And then that's it. That's the whole assignment. All right. So the point of the assignment is for you to showcase that you understand how to use print in the way that I just described. I also, of course, will be looking for that proper code layout, right, which is what I talked about initially, and sort of what in particular going to be looking for that header block situated the way it is. I'm going to be looking for the code to be structured the way I've told you to. This is how I'll be grading the assignment. So if it runs with no errors, meaning I don't get like a weird error while I'm running it, then that's 15 points. If you have all the labels and answers ordered correctly, so again, if I run your program and this favorite character ends up being like here and this ends up being here, like you're going to lose some points there because this is how I expect the output to look. And I guess I should, if I haven't made that clear yet, when I say the example output needs to look like this, I don't mean it needs to look sort of kind of like this. I mean it needs to look like this. This is exactly what I'm looking for. It is not like however you feel like it. If it doesn't look like this, then you probably can expect to lose some points, especially when you see things like correctly ordered or the correct new lines. And a very common grading rubric criteria you'll see in most of my assignments, not in this one because the whole thing is just output, but in other ones will be a criteria that is called correct output. And what I'm really looking for is to make sure that your output looks exactly the way that I've told you it needs to look. And it's one of the ways I'm gauging whether or not you have a good understanding of how to format your output, but also sometimes it's just how I'm able to gauge whether or not you even did the assignment right. Okay, so that's the one programming assignment you have. I don't know if I mentioned this during the first lecture, so I'll say it here. You can submit in Canvas as many times as you like before the due date. So if you make a submission and then you realize afterwards, like, oh no, whoops, it didn't do what I thought it should do, or I didn't account for something, or whatever, it's fine. If the due date hasn't passed yet, just make another submission. I will only ever assess the very last thing that you put into Canvas. So if you have 10 submissions in there, I'm going to look at the 10th submission. It's the only one I'm ever going to look at when the due date passes. I'm going to look at the very last thing you gave me, and that's going to be the thing I grade. I don't go digging around through the 100 other submissions before that. I have to have a little bit of a life, right? But just hopefully that gives you a little peace of mind that it's not like a one and done, right? And also, hopefully, you're jumping into Piazza before you even make the submission and you've tested it out. You've done what I was just doing here in my development environment. My hope is that you've worked it all through, you've ran your code, you've looked at the output, you see how everything's supposed to work, you feel really good about it, and you've gotten help on Piazza if you were needing it. All that's already happened beforehand. But even if it happens afterwards, you can submit up to the due date. Okay. And then let's go ahead and go back over here. Let's go to the Piazza post, and I was just talking about Piazza. So remember, you have a Piazza post due every week. I have posted up the next weekly discussion topic if that's what you want to do. If otherwise, hopefully you're just asking some questions or helping other students who have questions. I really want to bolster this as the way that folks are interacting with each other and getting help from each other in the class. So please, please, please make use of it. It's a really neat tool. And you already had to watch the video on how to use it. So I've already forced you to learn how to use the tool, so you might as well use it now, right? That's my general philosophy. Let me just quickly check my notes to make sure I've covered everything that I wanted to cover for today. I think that's it. So, okay, that's it for today. I don't think I have anything else. So I will, of course, post all this code. You can expect it to show up in the in our lecture 2 code. You'll see something that says like lecture code show up, and that'll happen every week in the same module that I posted it in. So it's not there now because I obviously haven't written it yet, but it will be by the time you're looking at this video. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, adios.